It would no longer be safe to assume that everything on your favorite television show would turn out all right, or even that the worst wouldn't happen. The sudden death of regular characters, once unthinkable, became such a trope that it launched a kind of morbid parlor game, speculating on who would be next to go. I remember watching sometime toward the end of the decade an episode of Dexter, a show that took the anti-hero principle to an all but absurd length by featuring a serial killer as its protagonist, in which a poor victim had been strapped to a gurney, sedated, and ritually amputated limb by limb. The thing a viewer feared most, the image that could make one's stomach crawl up his or her ribcage, was that the victim would wake up, realize his plight, and start screaming. 10 years earlier, I would have felt protected from such a sight by the rules and conventions of television. It simply would not happen, because it could not happen. It was a sickening, utterly thrilling sensation to realize that there was no longer any such protection.
These were characters whom, conventional wisdom had once insisted, Americans would never allow into their living rooms. Unhappy, morally compromised, complicated, deeply human. They played a seductive game with the viewer, daring them to emotionally invest in, even root for, even love, a gamut of criminals whose offenses would come to include everything from adultery and polygamy in shows like Mad Men and Big Love, to vampirism and serial murder in True Blood and Dexter. From the time Tony Soprano waded into his pool to welcome his flock of wayward ducks, it had been clear that viewers were willing to be seduced.
I left the world of The Sopranos convinced that something new and important was going on. The feeling deepened as I continued to watch David Simon's The Wire, HBO's other masterpiece, and a new show from one of the writers of The Sopranos, Matthew Weiner's Mad Men. The ambition and achievement of these shows went beyond the simple notion of television getting good. The open-ended 12 or 13 episode serialized drama was maturing into its own distinct art form. What's more, it had become the signature American art form of the first decade of the 21st century, the equivalent of what the films of Scorsese, Altman, Coppola, and others had been to the 1970s, or the novels of Updike, Roth, and Mailer had been to the 1960s. This is a book about how and why it happened.